Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're talking about The Division 2. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations. Today, the choice to go rogue. Let's get to it. The Dark Zone was considered to be a PvP environment with PvE elements in it in the original game, and the developers are trying to turn that around and trying to make it a PvE environment with the option for PvP. So what do I mean by that? Now, the rogue status is more of a spectrum instead of a black or white. So instead of being rogue or not rogue, you have degrees of being rogue. So now you have choices to make when a player dies in the Dark Zone. You drop whatever contaminated loot you had and you have to respawn. Well, the loot that's lying on the ground in Division 1 could be picked up by anyone. Division 2 gives you a choice. You can choose to pick up the loot or secure the loot. Securing the loot allows the player that died to come back and pick it up without fear that someone else will take their stuff. Stealing the loot will put you on the spectrum of rogue, and it'll give you a timer. You can initiate rogue status by hitting a button. You can initiate by picking a lock on a DZ cache. Certain bosses and certain enemies will randomly drop keys that you can open then the DZ caches, or you can pick the lock, but picking the lock will put you on the spectrum of rogue and begin your journey. As well, you can hack shade terminals, and that'll put you on the rogue spectrum. Now, what do I mean when I'm talking about rogue spectrum? So rogue spectrum has 3 different levels. You have the base level. So at the low end of the spectrum, you have non-lethal activities, things like the picking the lock, and that'll cause you to go rogue. And you can do other rogue activities while you're doing that, like trying to locate the Den of Thieves. However, you are not very visible on the map, not visible at all, in fact, unless someone actually visibly sees you. If you take violent action, so you start attacking other players, take them out, then all of a sudden you go up the spectrum to disavowed rogue. This makes you a little bit more visible when you're in proximity to other players. All of a sudden they'll see the red skull and know you're close by. Now, when you take out several agents, you build up that disavowed ranking, and then you become manhunt, and that's the gold skull, and then you are on the map, and anyone in the Dark Zone will be able to see you and have a choice of whether or not to try to engage you as a manhunt target. So if you want to go in and you want to start shooting people, you can jump right into disavowed rogue. If you only want to go in and, steal some loot that you wouldn't necessarily have been able to get because you didn't have any keys, you wanted more loot from the supply drop, then you can dip your toes into the rogue spectrum, but at the low end where you're still pretty much invisible. Think of, James Bond or, a spy working undercover. So low end, you're more or less invisible, act just like a regular player, but when people see you, they will know that you're rogue. Disavowed rogues have a little bit more of a presence. You'll know when they're close by. Manhunt rogues, you'll see them from further away and they'll be on the map. So the Dark Zone is going to present lots of choices. Choosing to go rogue or not to go rogue. Choose to help people out or take them out. If you are looking for pure PvP action, then you're going to go into one of the either the skirmish or the domination matches. Domination is a control type where you have 3 zones and you want to control 2 or 3 of the zones for as long as possible. Build up your score and then you win. And then skirmish is just take out the other team. You only have a certain number of spawns, and spawns are in waves. So if half your team gets taken out, they'll respawn, and then you'll be able to regroup once that wave of spawns happens. Additionally, they have talked about buffs in PvP matches where they are kind of modifiers which you can pick up, go around. They're not going to be central. They're going to be more along the periphery, and you're going to see that it's a buff, but you won't know exactly what that buff does. Either a little bit extra armor, little weapon stability, weapon damage, and that's for the entire team. So if you're behind on points and you need to do something to get ahead, that buff may be the little extra push that you need to get your team back in track and in the lead. Now, we can't talk about the Dark Zone without talking about skills. There are quite a few skills, 8 skills: Pulse, Turret, Seeker Mine, Shield. Those are all from the Division. Now, they will work a little bit differently. Some have the same kinds of things. So Assault Turret is going to be just like you're used to. Regular Turret. Incinerator Turret is a lot like the Flame Turret in Division 1. However, it does not rotate. It can only fire in a cone in front of it. You have an Artillery Turret and a Sniper Turret. The Pulse, you've got a Jammer Pulse, a Scanner Pulse, and a Remote Pulse. The Jammer Pulse will take out enemy skills in a small area around you. The Scanner works just like you would think, and then the Remote Pulse is a throwable pulse. So you can think of it like a grenade, throw it somewhere, and then every 5 seconds it will pulse enemies or around that spot. Now that can be destroyed, of course, whereas the Scanner Pulse cannot. It's centered on you. You have Seeker Mines. You have the Explosive Seeker Mine, which is very similar to what you're used to. The Air Burst, which will be a little bit more controllable. You have a Mender and a Cluster Seeker Mine. Shield, you have the Crusader Shield, which is what you're used to in Division 1, where you have the pistol and the shield. The Bulwark Shield is a half shield where you can use your regular primary weapon. Now, for new skills, you have the Hive, the Drone, the Chem Launcher, and possibly a new one called Firefly. So the Hive we've seen in E3, it has a few variants. You have the regular Stinger Hive, which just does damage. Restore, which will restore your armor. Booster, which will increase your skill cooldowns so you get your skills back faster. And then Reviver, so that you can bring back teammates, or presumably yourself if you go down. The Drone, you have the Striker, which is similar to the turret but more mobile. The Defender, which will take out a few bullets before it gets, or if it gets taken out. Bombardier, Fixer, and Tactician. Chem Launcher, you have the Fire Starter, which again we saw at E3. The Riot Foam, and then Oxidizer and Reinforcer. Now, a lot of the skills are pretty sketchy at this time. We've only seen a few of them in use. We've seen a little bit of the Seeker Mine, the Stinger Hive. We've seen a little bit of the Shield from some of the Dark Zone play, and some Pulse. Now, one of the actions you can take while you're being rogue is to try to find the entrance to the Den of Thieves. And in order to do that, you need to what they call triangulate by doing rogue actions. So rogue actions, even if you're at the low end, you can still do it. You can hack terminals, you can pick locks, and you can still triangulate it. If you're manhunt, you'll still have to do some of those same things. You'll still have to pick locks, and you'll still have to hack the terminals in order to find that entrance. So I'd like to think of the Den of Thieves as sending out a coded message, and in order to decode that message, which is the entrance to the Den of Thieves, you have to, hack terminals, and you have to pick locks, which will give clues towards the coded message, and you eventually decode it, and then you can get in, kind of like a password to get in. But also where the entrance is, because you don't even know where the entrance is until you decode that message. And getting into the Den of Thieves opens up new options, because there are new things and exclusive things that are only available in the Den of Thieves. So we will see more about that either in the beta or when the game actually launches in March. Something else the developers talked about is the ranking system, or levels, in the Dark Zone. We're all familiar with the ranking. DZ ranking system starts at 0 and goes all the way up to 99. And once you got to about level 75, it no longer really mattered, because you had to have level 75 max to buy all the goods and services that were in the Dark Zone from those vendors. In the Division 2, they're going to be levels instead of ranks, and as you go up in levels, you unlock certain perks. These levels are pertinent to the Dark Zone. They'll either give you an extra slot for your contaminated items, it'll reduce the extraction time, and other items. So there are benefits to both getting levels and retaining levels. So of course, when you're talking about ranking and levels in the Dark Zone, you're also talking about going rogue, going rogue is a risk, and the higher that risk, so the higher you are on the spectrum, becoming disavowed rogue or manhunt rogue, also comes greater rewards. So you have larger bumps in your DZ rank, you have better loot that you can get from doing that cycle of going manhunt and then cleansing it out. And it is very similar to the Rogue 2.0 that they debuted in The Division. You start going rogue, you start taking out people. Once you go manhunt, you no longer have a timer. You can stay manhunt as long as you want. And a terminal opens up. You go to the terminal and you can cleanse your manhunt. And then you can start all over. When you cleanse, you get a nice cache in your inventory, which cannot be taken away. And then you can rinse and repeat as many times as you want to take that risk. Now, in 2 out of the 3 dark zones, it will be normalized play. So if you are spec'd out and above the average, those stats are going to come down a little bit. If you're below the average, they're going to bring you up some. So you're more in line with a normal bell curve. So if your weapon damage is just out of the ballpark, really, really high, and you're going up against someone that has really low weapon damage, those are going to be brought in line. Not going to be exactly the same. Person with really high damage is still going to have higher damage, but it won't be crazy high. Now, there will be one dark zone on a rotating schedule that is the occupied dark zone, and the gloves are off and you can do whatever. There's friendly fire. There's a lot of rogue action to be expected in that dark zone as a result. So you have people that can start shooting at you that aren't rogue. They'll start damaging you. They'll go rogue, and then you have to react. Or vice versa. You're not rogue. You see someone, you come up on a group, you start shooting, you go rogue, and you can take them out. A little bit of an advantage if you get the drop on another team. So Division 2 is kind of playing with that risk reward, trying to make it enticing for everyone to go into the dark zone, both with having items that don't need to be extracted, with a little bit nicer items that need to be extracted, with the gameplay loop where you can go rogue and then cleanse yourself and then do it again. You can go and try to triangulate the Den of Thieves and you can do some business there. You will need certain skills or items in order to participate fully in that. But that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to ring the bell before you leave to be notified of all future episodes as soon as they go live. And thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll see you next time.